Part 3. The Grinding Begins, the Nigma. Third Armada entered human space with all the confidence of a species that had never lost a war. 300 warships moved in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls reflecting starlight like a constellation of moving jewels. At their head, Grand Admiral Thexcor stood on his flagship's bridge, already planning the victory celebration. "Scan for human fleet concentrations," he ordered. "When we find them, we will crush them in one glorious battle." But the human fleets were not where the Nigma expected them to be. Admiral Hyun-woo had divided his forces into 12 smaller groups, each one moving independently through space. He did not want a glorious battle. He wanted something the Nigma had never experienced before. He wanted to make them bleed slowly. "All fleet commanders, you have your targets," Hyun-woo transmitted. "Do not engage the main Nigma force. Hit their supply lines, their communication relays, their isolated outposts. Make them chase shadows while they starve." Lieutenant Sung-min commanded a small flotilla of mine layer ships near the hyperspace lanes that connected Nigma territory to their forward bases. His ships were not glamorous. They did not have massive weapons or thick armor, but they carried thousands of autonomous mines, small hunter-killer drones that could wait in space for weeks or months. "Deploy pattern Delta 7, Sung-min ordered. "Spread the mines across all major hyperspace exit points in this sector." His crews worked for 18 hours straight, seeding the darkness with invisible death. When they finished, any Nigma ship trying to use those hyperspace lanes would emerge directly into a minefield. The first Nigma supply convoy hit Sung-min's mines 3 days later. 16 freighters carrying food, medical supplies, and ammunition emerged from hyperspace and immediately found themselves surrounded by hundreds of small, fast-moving objects. The mines activated, their simple programming directing them toward the largest heat signatures. The convoy's escort ships tried to shoot down the mines, but there were too many. Explosions rippled across the formation. By the time the Nigma ships managed to destroy the last mine, half the convoy was crippled or destroyed. The survivors limped back to their home base carrying news of a new human tactic. No honor, no glory, just patient death waiting in the dark. Grand Admiral Thexcor received the reports with growing frustration. His massive armada was the most powerful force in Nigma space, but he could not find a human fleet to fight. Every time his scouts detected human ships, they vanished before his forces could engage. "They are cowards," Thexcor said. "They hide and run instead of facing us properly." His tactical officer, a veteran named Zelmoth, studied the star charts with concern. "Sir, we have lost contact with 7 supply convoys in the last week. Our forward bases are reporting shortages. If this continues, then we will simply take what we need from human colonies," Thexcor interrupted. "Send the 7th Squadron to raid the nearest human world. We will force them to defend their homes." But when the 7th Squadron reached the target colony, they found it evacuated. The humans had moved their civilians to safety and left behind a fully automated defense network. Satellites armed with missiles, orbital platforms with railguns, and ground installations that fired automatically at any ship that entered weapons range. The 7th Squadron lost 4 ships before retreating. They gained nothing. Meanwhile, Captain Sora's destroyer group was hunting bigger prey. Intelligence from Operative Minji had revealed the location of a Nigma fuel depot in the Outer Rim. The depot supplied fuel to 1/3 of the Nigma Third Armada. Without it, those ships would be unable to maneuver effectively. "We go in fast and we leave fast," Sora told her crew. "Our missiles hit the fuel storage tanks. The secondary explosions will do the rest." The attack came at night local time. The Nigma defenders barely had time to activate their shields before human missiles arrived. The fuel depot's massive storage tanks, each one containing enough fuel to power a battleship for a year, erupted in a chain reaction of explosions visible from orbit. Sora's ships were already entering hyperspace when the final explosion tore the depot apart. Behind them, they left 1,000 Nigma personnel dead and 1/3 of the Third Armada effectively grounded until new fuel supplies could arrive. On Varaxis Prime, the High Council watched their military superiority crumble piece by piece. Supply shortages were becoming critical. Military bases were running out of ammunition. Ships were being recalled from patrol duties to conserve fuel. Councillor Dalreth spoke again, his voice carefully neutral. "Sovereign Kelneth, perhaps we should reconsider our position. The humans are not fighting the way we expected. They are not trying to defeat our fleets. They are trying to strangle our empire. We have 400 worlds and populations in the trillions, Kelnith said. A few supply shortages mean nothing. We will adapt. But adaptation takes time, and time was a weapon the humans wielded expertly. Intelligence Director Ji-Wan expanded her psychological operations. More human history files flooded Nigma networks. This time the files focused on specific wars. The Siege of Leningrad, where humans endured 900 days of starvation rather than surrender. The Pacific Island campaigns, where humans fought for months over tiny pieces of land. The Siege of Stalingrad, where 2 armies destroyed an entire city rather than give ground. The message was clear. Humans did not know how to quit. They would grind forward no matter the cost. They would accept losses that would break other species. They would turn war into a test of endurance, and endurance was a game humans had been playing for thousands of years. Nigma citizens began to worry. Their government had promised a quick victory, a demonstration of Nigma superiority. Instead, the war was dragging into its 3rd month with no end in sight. Food prices were rising. Fuel was being rationed. Young Nigma were being drafted into military service and sent to the front lines, where many of them never returned. Protests began on some of the outer Nigma worlds. Citizens demanding to know why the war was continuing. Citizens asking why the mighty Nigma Empire could not defeat a species of primitive mammals. Sovereign Kelnith ordered brutal crackdowns on the protests. Security forces arrested thousands. Telepathic interrogators rooted out dissent. Public executions were broadcast as warnings to anyone who questioned the government. But fear is a double-edged weapon. The more Kelnith tried to control his people, the more they questioned whether the war was worth fighting. Admiral Hyun-woo watched the intelligence reports from Nigma space with grim satisfaction. The enemy empire was starting to fracture from within. But he knew the war was far from over. A wounded animal was often the most dangerous. The Nigma 3rd Armada is still out there, tactical specialist Dong Hyun reported. 300 ships, most of them still fully operational. Eventually they will find one of our fleets and force a battle. Then we will give them one, Hyun-woo said. But it will be a battle on our terms, not theirs. He pulled up a star chart and marked a location near the Crimson Nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust that interfered with sensors and communications. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Send orders to the 2nd and 7th fleets, Hyun-woo said. They will converge here and wait. When the Nigma find them, we will teach them what human warfare really means. Captain Sora received her orders 12 hours later. The Battle of Crimson Nebula was coming, and it would be the largest space engagement in human history. She gathered her crew and spoke to them honestly. We are going to fight 300 enemy ships with less than 200 of our own. The odds are not in our favor, but the odds have never stopped humans before. We win by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than our enemies. We win by fighting the way humans have always fought. Together, her crew cheered, not because they thought victory would be easy, but because they trusted their captain and their training. The Nigma wanted a glorious battle. Humans would give them hell instead. Part 5. Ashes of Arrogance. The Grand Fleet arrived at Varax's Prime on a day the Nigma would never forget. 400 human warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, surrounding the throne world like a tightening noose. They did not fire. They did not issue threats. They simply waited in orbit, their weapons trained on the planet below. Admiral Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the crystalline cities that covered the Nigma homeworld. He thought about the 12,000 dead on New Jeju. He thought about Minji, who had died to save Earth. He thought about all the human lives lost because one species had been too arrogant to accept peace. Open a channel to the Nigma High Council, Hyun-woo said. On Varax's Prime, Sovereign Kelnith sat alone in the throne room. His council had abandoned him. His military had been destroyed. His people were starving because human blockades prevented any supply ships from reaching the homeworld. 3 months of siege had broken what 3,000 years of pride had built. The human admiral wishes to speak with you, an aide said quietly. Kelnith wanted to refuse. He wanted to spit defiance at the primitives who had somehow defeated his empire. But he was tired. So very tired. Put him on. Hyun-woo's face appeared on the holographic display. The human looked older than when the war had started, his face lined with stress and grief. But his eyes were hard and uncompromising. Sovereign Kelnith, I am going to make this very simple. You have two choices. Surrender immediately and accept our terms, or we will reduce every city on your world to ash. You have 1 hour to decide. Kelnith felt rage building in his mind. You dare threaten us? We are the Nigma Empire. We ruled 400 worlds while your species was learning to walk upright. You ruled 400 worlds, Hyunwoo corrected. Past tense. Your empire is dead. Your fleets are scrap metal floating in space. Your people are starving. This is not a negotiation. This is me telling you how this ends. And if I refuse? Hyunwoo's expression did not change. Then in 1 hour my ships will begin orbital bombardment. We will start with your military installations, then your government buildings, then your industrial centers. We will continue until you surrender, or until there is nothing left to surrender. I do not want to do this, but I will if you force me to. Kelnith stared at the human admiral. He searched for mercy in those eyes and found none. He searched for hesitation and found none. He saw only cold determination and the willingness to do whatever was necessary. For the first time, Kelnith truly understood what his empire had unleashed. These were not soft merchants playing at war. These were creatures who had spent 10,000 years learning how to destroy each other, and they were very, very good at it. What are your terms? Kelnith asked quietly. Hyunwoo transmitted a document. The Nigma Empire is dissolved. Your 400 worlds will be placed under a provisional government supervised by the Terran Assembly and our allies. Your military is reduced to defensive forces only. No more than 1 ship per 10 worlds. War reparations will be paid over the next 75 years. And you, Sovereign Kelnith, will stand trial for the murder of 12,000 human civilians. Kelnith read the terms. They were harsh but not impossible. The Nigma would survive, diminished but alive. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to choose death over surrender. But he thought about the billions of Nigma citizens below, frightened and hungry and waiting for him to save them. He thought about the children who had never asked for this war. He thought about all the lives that would be lost if he chose pride over sense. I accept your terms, Kelnith said. Then he stood, walked to the balcony of his throne room and threw himself off. He fell 300 meters to the courtyard below. The crystalline structure of his body shattered on impact. He chose death on his own terms rather than facing human justice. Ambassador Tai Jin arrived on Varaxis Prime 3 days later. He had come full circle, from the diplomat who delivered the warning to the diplomat who would oversee the peace. The remaining members of the Nigma High Council waited for him in the throne room, their bodies dimmed, their telepathic voices muted with defeat. The Treaty of Broken Crowns, Tai Jin said, placing the document on the table. Sign it and we begin the work of rebuilding. Refuse it and the siege continues. Councillor Dalrith signed first. The others followed. The war was officially over. Captain Sora received new orders. No more combat missions. No more hunting enemy fleets. Instead, she was tasked with leading the peacekeeping force that would ensure the treaty was honored. I trained to fight, Sora said to Admiral Hyunwoo, not to be a police officer. We all did, Hyunwoo replied. But the war is over. Now we have to win the peace, and that is often harder than winning the war. Sora accepted the assignment. Her ships patrolled Nigma space, watching for any signs of military buildup or treaty violations. Sometimes she encountered Nigma military officers who had fought against her during the war. The conversations were always awkward. One Nigma captain asked her, "How did you do it? How did you defeat us so completely?" Sora thought about her answer carefully. You fought the way you thought war should be. We fought the way war actually is. You wanted glory and honor. We wanted to win and go home. That made all the difference. Engineer Young-hee transitioned from weapons development to reconstruction. She led teams that rebuilt Nigma infrastructure, restored their power grids, and helped their factories convert from military to civilian production. She worked alongside Nigma engineers who had spent the war trying to kill humans. Why are you helping us? One Nigma engineer asked. We destroyed your colony. We killed your people. Young-hee paused in her work. Because the war is over. Because your children deserve a future even if your leaders were monsters. Because that is what humans do. We fight until you surrender and then we help you rebuild. That is who we are. The Nigma engineer had no response to that. Tactical specialist Dong Hyun established military academies on former Nigma worlds. He taught their young officers defensive strategies, fleet coordination, and tactical planning. But he also taught them history. This is footage from your attack on New Jeju, Dong Hyun said. showing the images of burning cities, 12,000 dead, 12,000 people who were growing food and raising families. That is where this war started. Remember this. Remember what happens when you choose violence over diplomacy. The Nigma students watched in silence. Some wept, some looked away. All of them learned. On New Jeju Colony, the rebuilding was slow but steady. The cities that had burned were being reconstructed. Families were returning to their farms. Life was beginning again. Admiral Hyunwoo attended the dedication of a memorial to the 12,000 dead. He stood beside Nigma representatives who laid wreaths in remembrance. It was awkward. It was painful. But it was necessary. The memorial was simple, a wall of black stone with 12,000 names carved into it. At the center was a longer inscription. They came with warnings we did not heed. They came with fire we could not withstand. Let our ruins teach what our pride would not. Respect those who offer peace, for their way of war is beyond imagining. A Nigma mother stood beside a human father, both of them looking at names of their lost children. They did not speak the same language, but grief needs no translation. They stood together in shared sorrow. After the ceremony, a young Nigma approached Hyunwoo. My father died in the Battle of Crimson Nebula. He was a gunner on the flagship. Hyunwoo waited, unsure what the young Nigma wanted. I hated you, the Nigma continued. I hated all humans. I wanted revenge for my father's death, but my mother made me read the treaty. She made me study human history. She made me understand why the war happened. And now? Hyunwoo asked gently. Now I understand that my father died because our leaders were fools, not because humans are evil. He died in a war that should never have been fought. The young Nigma paused. I am studying to be a diplomat, so that I can help make sure this never happens again. Hyunwoo placed a hand on the young Nigma's shoulder. Your father would be proud. 3 years after the war ended, Ambassador Tae-jin stood before the Galactic Assembly. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, all of them watching humanity with new eyes. The species that had been dismissed as primitives was now recognized as a major power. The Terran Assembly wishes to make our position clear, Tae-jin said. We do not seek empire. We do not desire conquest. We want to trade, to share knowledge, to build peaceful relationships with all species. He paused, making sure he had everyone's attention. But understand this. We are slow to anger and slow to fight. We extend peace to all who will take it. We prefer diplomacy to violence. But if you force our hand, if you threaten our people, if you ignore our warnings as the Nigma did, you will learn what we are capable of. We have spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare against ourselves. We know 1,000 ways to end civilizations. We choose not to use them. We beg you, do not force our hand. The chamber was silent. Every representative understood the message. Humanity was offering friendship and partnership. But behind that offer was an unspoken threat, a reminder of what had happened to the Nigma Empire. Part 4, The Breaking Point. The Battle of Crimson Nebula began at dawn, though dawn meant nothing in deep space. Grand Admiral Thexacor's scouts had finally located a concentration of human ships near the nebula's edge. 2 fleets, nearly 200 warships apparently waiting for reinforcements. At last, Thexacor said, his telepathic voice filled with satisfaction. No more hiding. No more cowardice. We will crush them in open battle and end this war. His 300 ships moved into attack formation. Their formation was beautiful. A perfect display of Nigma military doctrine developed over thousands of years. Ships arranged by size and firepower, each one covering the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that would destroy any enemy foolish enough to engage. But Admiral Hyunwoo had not placed his fleets there to look impressive. He had placed them there as bait. All ships, weapons hold. Hyunwoo ordered from his flagship, let them come to us. Let them enter the nebula. Captain Sora watched her tactical display as the Nigma Armada approached. The massive enemy force looked unstoppable, a wall of crystalline ships that reflected the nebula's red light like blood. They are so confident, her tactical officer said quietly. They have always been confident, Sora replied. That is their weakness. The Nigma fleet crossed into the nebula. Immediately, their sensors began giving false readings. The gas clouds interfered with their scanning systems, creating ghost images and dead zones. Their telepathic communications, which normally allowed instant coordination across vast distances, became fuzzy and unreliable. Contact. Human fleet dead ahead, a Nigma scout ship reported. Thexcor smiled. All ships attack formation. Advance and destroy. The Nigma armada surged forward, their plasma weapons charging. They expected the human ships to either flee or try to match them in a direct engagement. They expected a traditional battle. They did not get one. Now, Hyunwoo said calmly. Thousands of missiles erupted from the human ships. Not plasma beams that traveled at light speed and required precise aiming. Missiles that could think, could adjust their course, could hunt their targets even through sensor-disrupting nebula gas. The Nigma point defense systems opened fire, destroying hundreds of missiles. But there were thousands more. The missiles swarmed like angry insects, overwhelming the defenses through sheer numbers. Explosions rippled through the Nigma formation. Ships that had served for centuries died in seconds, their hulls torn apart by multiple impacts. The perfect formation began to break apart as individual ships maneuvered to avoid the missile swarms. Electronic warfare. Full deployment, Hyunwoo ordered. Human ships began broadcasting signals that jammed Nigma targeting systems. False sensor readings multiplied. Nigma gunners found themselves shooting at targets that did not exist while real human ships fired from unexpected angles. Return fire. Return fire, Thexcor screamed. The Nigma ships did return fire, their plasma beams tearing through the nebula gas. Some human ships were hit, their shields overloading, their hulls burning. The TDF Valor exploded, taking her entire crew of 300. The TDF Steadfast lost her engines and went spinning into the nebula's depths. But for every human ship that fell, 5 Nigma ships died. The humans were fighting smart, using the environment, using their technology, using tactics that the Nigma had never encountered before. Captain Sora led her destroyer group in a flanking maneuver, coming up behind a cluster of Nigma cruisers. Target their engines. I want them crippled, not destroyed. Let them watch the rest of the battle. Her missiles struck true. 4 Nigma cruisers lost power, their crews trapped inside as the battle raged around them. They would survive to tell other Nigma what had happened here. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Nigma Third Armada had ceased to exist as a fighting force. 214 ships destroyed, 56 ships crippled and drifting, 30 ships managed to retreat into hyperspace, carrying news of the disaster. The human fleets had lost 43 ships. Every loss was mourned, but the strategic victory was undeniable. Hyunwoo stood on his bridge looking at the casualty reports. 4,000 human lives lost, at least 30,000 Nigma dead or dying in the wreckage around them. Dispatch rescue ships, he ordered. Save everyone we can, even the Nigma survivors. His officers stared at him in surprise. Sir, they are the enemy, one officer said carefully. They are defeated enemies, Hyunwoo replied. We are not monsters. We save who we can. On Varaxis Prime, Sovereign Kelnith watched the tactical recordings of the battle 3 times. His greatest armada destroyed, his finest admiral dead, his empire's military power shattered. For the first time in his long life, Kelnith felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. We must make peace, Counselor Dalrith said. Before they come for our homeworlds. Never, Kelnith roared. If we cannot defeat them, we will take their homeworld with us. Activate the Void Crown. The council chamber went silent. The Void Crown was an ancient weapon, a planet killer built thousands of years ago when the Nigma had first begun their conquest of space. It had been used only once to destroy a world that had defied them. Since then, it had waited in a hidden location, a last resort that every Nigma hoped would never be needed. The Void Crown takes weeks to charge, Dalrith said, and the humans will detect it. They will find it and destroy it before it can fire. Then we will hide it better, Kelnith said, and we will aim it at Earth itself. If the Nigma Empire falls, humanity will fall with us. But the Nigma Empire had a problem. Among their citizens, among their military, among their government, there were those who no longer believed in Kelnith's vision. And some of those doubters had access to classified information. Field Operative Minji had been undercover in Nigma space for 8 months. She worked as a communications technician on Varaxis Prime, a job that gave her access to government networks. She had sent valuable intelligence back to Earth dozens of times. When she intercepted the orders to activate the Void Crown, she knew immediately what it meant. She also knew that transmitting this information would expose her. The Nigma security forces would trace the signal. They would find her. They would kill her. Minji thought about her family back on Earth. Her parents, her younger brother, the friends she had left behind when she volunteered for this mission. She thought about the 12,000 people who had died on New Jeju. She sent the message. 47 minutes later, Nigma security forces broke down her door. She tried to fight, managed to take down 2 of them with the small weapons she always carried. But there were too many. They beat her unconscious and dragged her to an interrogation center. She never told them anything. Even when they tore into her mind with telepathic torture, she held on to the one thought that mattered. The message had been sent. Earth would know about the Void Crown. Minji died 3 days later from the interrogation. Her last words were a quote from an ancient Earth military saying, "No one left behind." On Earth, Intelligence Director Ji-won received Minji's message and immediately understood what it meant. The Void Crown was located in a dead star system near the edge of Nigma space. It would be heavily guarded. Getting to it would require a suicide mission. "Get me, Commander Ji-won," Ji-won said. Ji-won stood in the briefing room, looking at the mission parameters. Reach the Void Crown, destroy it. Do it before it could charge and fire at Earth. The route would take his ships through a collapsing star system, through gravitational anomalies that would tear most ships apart. Even if they survived the journey, they would face the Void Crown's defensive fleet. "I will need volunteers," Ji-won said. "No one gets ordered to die." Every member of his crew volunteered. They knew the odds. They went anyway. The flight through the collapsing star system took 37 hours. 2 ships were lost to gravitational shear. Another ship's reactor failed, stranding her crew in the darkness. But the remaining ships pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that Earth's survival depended on them. They emerged from the gravitational chaos and found the Void Crown waiting. It was massive, a station the size of a small moon, its weapons already charging with the power to crack a planet's crust. "All ships, attack pattern Omega," Ji-won ordered. "We only get 1 pass. Make it count." The defensive fleet tried to stop them. Nigma ships fired everything they had. Ji-won's demolitions expert Yun-Soo worked frantically, programming the missiles with the exact coordinates Minji had provided. Navigator Kyung-hee piloted through a storm of enemy fire, her hands steady even as explosions rocked the ship. They reached firing range. The missiles launched. Most were destroyed by point defense, but 3 got through, slamming into the Void Crown's charging chamber. The explosion was visible for light years. The Void Crown tore itself apart, its immense power turning inward. The defensive fleet was consumed in the blast. Ji-won's ship limped away from the explosion, half her crew dead, her hull breached in a dozen places. But they had succeeded. Earth was safe. Admiral Hyun-woo received the report and closed his eyes in relief. Then he opened them again, his face hard. "Prepare the Grand Fleet," he ordered. "We are going to Viraxis Prime. This war ends now." Part 2. The Human Way of War. The Nigma strike came on day 18. They did not wait for the 30-day deadline. They did not believe humans deserved even that small courtesy. Sovereign Kelnith had personally ordered the attack on New Jeju, a farming colony on the edge of human space. The world had minimal defenses, just a few patrol ships and a small garrison. It was home to 200,000 people who grew crops and raised families and had never hurt anyone. The Nigma Third Fleet arrived without warning. Their ships emerged from hyperspace directly above the colony's main city. They did not bother with demands or negotiations. Their weapons spoke first. Plasma beams tore through the atmosphere. Buildings that had stood for 50 years disappeared in flashes of superheated light. The colony's shield generators, designed to protect against asteroid impacts, lasted less than 30 seconds against military-grade weapons. 12,000 people died in the first hour. The Nigma commanders watched from orbit, waiting for the surrender message they knew would come. All species surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. It was the natural order of things, but the message that came was not a surrender. It was silence. In the underground command bunker of New Jeju, the surviving colonists sealed the blast doors and activated their emergency beacon. They did not beg for mercy. They did not ask the Nigma to stop. They simply transmitted 4 words to Earth: under attack. Send everyone. Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo received the message 47 minutes after the attack began. He was in his office reviewing deployment orders when the alert flashed across his screen. He read the casualty reports. He saw the footage from ground sensors showing burning cities and fleeing civilians. His hand moved to the communication panel without hesitation. All fleets, this is Hyun-woo. Protocol Ember is now fully active. You have your orders. Execute immediately. Across human space, 300 warships began moving. They did not move toward New Jeju. Saving the colony was no longer possible. Instead, they moved toward Nigma space, toward supply lines and trade routes and military installations. The Nigma had struck first. Humans would make sure they regretted it. Commander Jae-won led the 5th Fleet's reconnaissance wing through the Kepler boundary, the invisible line where human space ended and Nigma territory began. His ships were small, fast, and covered in stealth plating that made them nearly invisible to Nigma sensors. All ships maintain radio silence, Jae-won ordered. We are ghosts now. We find their patrol routes, map their supply lines, and report everything back to command. His navigator, a young woman named Kyung-hee, traced their course through the star charts. Sir, we are detecting a Nigma patrol group ahead. 6 cruisers, standard formation. Mark their position en route, Jae-won said. Send the data back to Admiral Hyun-woo. Do not engage. The reconnaissance wing passed within 10,000 kilometers of the Nigma patrol. The enemy ships never knew humans were there. Over the next 72 hours, Jae-won's fleet mapped 17 patrol routes, 9 supply convoys, and 3 military staging areas. Every piece of information went back to Earth, where tactical specialists like Dong-hyun analyzed it and built targeting plans. Captain Sora stood on the bridge of the TDF Retribution, watching the tactical display with cold focus. Her ship was a destroyer, smaller than the massive battleships in other fleets but faster and more maneuverable. She had handpicked her crew, men and women who understood what was about to happen. Target package received, her tactical officer reported. Nigma supply convoy, 7 freighters with 2 escort cruisers. Current position in the Theta sector. Sora studied the data. The convoy was carrying food, ammunition, and replacement parts to a Nigma forward base. Destroying it would not win the war, but it would make the enemy's life more difficult. Plot an intercept course, Sora ordered. We hit them fast and hard. No warnings, no mercy. The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the Nigma convoy. The enemy escorts barely had time to raise their shields before human missiles slammed into them. The first escort exploded immediately, torn apart by precision strikes on its reactor core. The second escort managed to return fire, but its plasma beams passed harmlessly through the space where the Retribution had been 3 seconds earlier. Target their engines, Sora said calmly. Leave them crippled but alive. I want them to send a message home. The battle lasted 9 minutes. All 7 freighters were destroyed. Both escort cruisers were left drifting in space, their engines dead, their crews trapped inside with enough life support to survive for 3 days. Long enough to call for help. Long enough to tell the Nigma High Council what had happened, Sora recorded a message and transmitted it on all Nigma military frequencies. This is Captain Sora of the Terran Defense. Force, you killed 12,000 of our people. You thought we would surrender. You thought we would beg. You were wrong. This is just the beginning. The message reached Veraxis Prime 6 hours later. Sovereign Kelnith watched the recording in silence. The council chamber, usually filled with telepathic chatter, was quiet. One attack, Kelnith said finally. One convoy. They are trying to frighten us with pinpricks. But over the next week, the pinpricks continued. Nigma patrol ships disappeared. Supply convoys never reached their destinations. Forward bases reported human ships appearing and vanishing like ghosts. The Nigma military, so confident in their superiority, began to feel something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. In Geneva, Intelligence Director Ji-won activated the second phase of Protocol Ember. She sat in a dark room surrounded by screens, each one showing different aspects of Nigma society. Their news broadcasts, their military communications, their civilian networks. Begin Operation Reflection, she ordered. Across Nigma space, their communication networks were infiltrated by human agents. Field operative Minji, working undercover on Enigma Trade World, uploaded files into their version of the internet. The files contained human history, videos of human wars, images of cities destroyed by human weapons, footage of soldiers fighting in conditions that would kill most species, statistics showing that in the last century alone, humans had killed over 100 million of their own kind in various conflicts. The message that accompanied the files was simple. We have been perfecting the art of warfare for 10,000 years, not against aliens, against ourselves. You are not our first war. You are not even our most difficult war. You are practice. On Varaxis Prime, citizens began watching the human files. They saw footage of ancient battles where humans fought with primitive weapons, killing each other in creative and brutal ways. They saw modern wars where cities were leveled by weapons that made Nigma plasma beams look gentle. Counselor Dalrith, one of the younger members of the High Council, watched a video of a human war called World War II. He saw 6 years of continuous fighting. He saw 50 million dead. He saw humans developing atomic weapons and using them on their own kind. He went to Sovereign Kelneth with his concerns. Perhaps we should reconsider this conflict, Dalrith said. These humans are not what we thought, Kelneth struck him. The telepathic blow sent Dalrith to his knees, pain lancing through his mind. We are the Nigma Empire, Kelneth said. We do not fear primitives, no matter how savage their history. Prepare the Third Armada. We will crush their fleets in one decisive battle and end this annoyance. Dalrith bowed and left the throne room, but doubt had entered his mind. And doubt once planted grows quickly. Admiral Hyunwoo received the intelligence reports about the Nigma Third Armada, 300 warships, the largest force the Nigma had assembled in a century. They were coming to human space looking for a decisive battle. Hyunwoo smiled grimly. The Nigma wanted a battle. Humans would give them something much worse. They would give them a war. Part 1. The Arrogance of Empires. The throne room of Varaxis Prime stretched higher than most buildings on Earth. Crystalline pillars rose from the polished floor, each one pulsing with the telepathic energy of the Nigma Empire. At the center of this grand hall sat the High Council, 7 beings whose bodies reflected light like living diamonds. Tae-Jin stood alone in the middle of the chamber. He wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, a small flag patch on his shoulder the only decoration. In his hand, he held a data tablet containing humanity's final warning. The human ambassador had traveled 3 months to reach this world. He had crossed hundreds of light years, passed through dangerous hyperspace lanes, and endured the contemptuous stares of Nigma guards. All of this to deliver a message that his superiors knew would probably be ignored. Sovereign Kelneth leaned forward on his throne. His voice entered Tae-Jin's mind directly, bypassing his ears entirely. The sensation felt like ice water trickling through his thoughts. Speak, human. Tell us why your primitives dare to summon us. Tae-Jin had prepared for this moment. He had studied Nigma culture for 2 years, learned their customs, understood their pride. He knew that showing fear would be fatal. He also knew that showing arrogance would be equally foolish. I bring a formal declaration from the United Terran Assembly, Tae-Jin said, his voice steady. Your military forces have conducted raids on 7 human colony worlds over the past 14 months. These raids have resulted in the deaths of over 30,000 civilians. We demand immediate cessation of all hostile actions. The council members exchanged glances. One of them, a female Nigma with particularly sharp crystal formations along her arms, laughed. The sound came directly into Tae-Jin's mind, sharp and mocking. Demands, she said. The Nigma Empire has ruled 400 star systems for 3,000 years. We take what we wish. We strike where we choose. What makes you think your species has any right to demand anything? Tae-Jin tapped his tablet and a holographic projection appeared above it. The image showed human colony worlds, trade routes, military installations, and population centers. Because we are asking nicely, Tae-Jin said simply. We prefer peace. We prefer diplomacy. But we will defend our people if you force us to do so. Kelneth rose from his throne. He was nearly 3 meters tall, his crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. You soft-skinned creatures discovered faster than light travel only 60 years ago, the sovereign said. You are infants playing with toys you barely understand. Your entire species numbers only 40 billion across 12 worlds. We command populations 20 times your size. Our technology was ancient when your ancestors were learning to make fire. That is all true, Tae-Jin acknowledged. But it does not give you the right to murder our people. Another council member spoke, his mental voice dripping with contempt. Rights? Power creates rights, human. The strong do as they will. The weak suffer as they must. This is the nature of the universe. Tae-Jin looked at each council member in turn. He had been instructed to give them one more chance. One final opportunity to avoid what was coming. His superiors had been very clear about this. The United Terran Assembly gives you 30 solar days to withdraw all military forces from human space and cease hostile actions. If you comply, we will consider the matter closed. If you do not, Tae-Jin paused, choosing his next words carefully. If you do not, we will respond appropriately. The council chamber erupted in laughter. Not audible laughter, but telepathic waves of amusement that crashed against Tae-Jin's mind like ocean waves. He stood firm, refusing to show any reaction. Tell your assembly this, Kelneth said. The Nigma Empire recognizes no authority but its own. We will continue our expansion into your territory. We will take what we need. If your people resist, they will be crushed. If they flee, they will be hunted. This is not negotiable. This is not a debate. This is reality. Tae-Jin bowed slightly, a gesture of formal closure and diplomatic protocol. Then I have delivered my message. I will return to my ship now. One moment, the female council member said. Before you go, human, understand something. We have studied your species. We know your history. You are creatures of commerce and comfort. You build homes and raise families. You write poetry and make art. You are not warriors. You are merchants pretending to be soldiers. Tae-Jin smiled then, just a slight curve of his lips. It was not a happy smile. You should have studied harder, he said quietly. The Nigma guards escorted him from the throne room. His shuttle lifted from Varaxis Prime 6 hours later. As his ship entered hyperspace for the long journey home, Tae-Jin recorded his final report. Mission unsuccessful. The Nigma High Council rejected all diplomatic overtures. They intend to continue hostile actions against human colonies. Recommendation: activate Protocol Ember immediately. Back on Earth in the underground command center beneath Geneva, Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo read Tae-Jin's report 3 times. He had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that the Nigma would see reason. He had wanted to avoid what was about to happen. He looked around the conference table. Captain Sora sat to his right, her face expressionless but her eyes hard. Tactical Specialist Dong Hyun was reviewing star charts, marking Nigma military installations. Intelligence Director Ji-Won was already pulling files on Nigma communication networks and command structures. They think we are soft, Hyunwoo said quietly. They think we are weak. Then they have made a fatal mistake, Sora replied. Hyunwoo activated the secure channel to the Terran Defense Committee. Faces appeared on the screen, men and women from every continent, every nation, every colony world. The Nigma have rejected our final warning, Hyunwoo said. We have 30 days before they expect us to do nothing. I propose we do something much sooner. The vote was unanimous. Protocol Ember was activated. Across human space, reserve fleets were called to active duty. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels switched to military production. Factories that made farming equipment retooled for weapons manufacturing. Millions of men and women who had been living peaceful lives put on uniforms and reported for duty. Humanity had tried peace. The Nigma had chosen war. They would soon learn the difference between a species that could fight and a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting how to destroy itself. The Nigma had ignored the warning. Now they would face the consequences.